cloudy. I'm actually gonna take out the vitreous humor. So the vitreous humor sits below the lens, and the vitreous humor helps maintain the eyeball shape. So if you can see, if I squeeze on the eyeball, it's usually pretty stable and not flexible and rigid. But if we were to take out the vitreous humor, which is this jelly substance that's coming out, we now see that the eyeball is actually quite flexible. So the vitreous humor really helps to maintain the eyeball shape. Now I'm going to cut into the eye so we can see that ciliary body that's surrounding the lens. So this black portion here is the ciliary body that helps the lens during accommodation. So the lens sits right or surrounding the or right in the middle of the ciliary body, and these muscles will contract in order to make the lens fatter to see things close up, and it's expanded when you need to see things that are far away. Let's try this exercise. Close one eye and now stare at an object about 20 feet away. Now it should be in focus. Now take your hand and place your finger right in front of your field of view and focus on your finger. What's going on here? So you should see that now your eye is focused on your finger instead of the object that's 20 feet away. This is what is called lens accommodation. The lens can accommodate depending on if you're focusing on an object that's close or an object that's far away. How does it do this? Well, surrounding the lens is something called the ciliary body. And this body of muscles, when they contract, actually causes the lens to get fatter, allowing for you to see up close and changing the focal length of the eye. When the lens is actually elongated, it causes the eye to focus on things that are far away. Often athletes like baseball players or cricket players perform these exercises to improve their reaction times to help adjust their eyes when a ball is traveling fast towards them. As the lens ages and as we age, the lens becomes more rigid and the muscles become more difficult to contract. This is why people usually require reading glasses or bifocals in order to see things up close. Have you ever noticed that people have to actually hold the paper out in front of them in order to see the words on the page? This is a condition called presbyopia, and it usually happens to us after the age of 40, when the lens muscles and the lens itself starts to age, and it becomes more difficult for the lens to accommodate. What if the lens was not transparent and it was opaque? What do you think would happen in this case? Take a few moments to discuss with your classmates what you think would happen. And now I'm going to introduce you to a professor of biology here at MIT, Professor Jonathan King. He studies proteins called crystallins that are in our eye lens. And he's going to explain what happens when our eye lens goes from being transparent to opaque.
The lens is actually one of the very few transparent tissues in the human body. The rest of the body absorbs light. Lens has to be transparent because, of course, the lens transmits light to the retina, and if your brain is going to recognize the image and know what you're seeing, it has to receive the light from the environment. The lens has to stay clear all your life, from the time you're born till older age, till my age. It's packed full of proteins. It's a little bit like the white of an egg. Just like when you cook an egg, the proteins unfold and they stick together and they stop transmitting light. You can get damage to the proteins in your lens, and they stick together and form big aggregates, we call them, and those scatter light, and you no longer can see clearly. In older people, this is a very, very serious problem. In fact, cataracts are the leading cause of blindness in the world population. So we, spending our time, we study these proteins in the test tube often, sometimes in animals, to try to understand why do they go wrong. You should be aware of the fact that your lens is somewhat more delicate than you might otherwise think. And make sure when you're out in the bright sun, you're wearing sunglasses. Watch out when you're in the laboratory for lasers and other forms of intense light. Don't stare at the sun. And be good to your lens, and you'll be able to see all your life.
Have you ever wondered how someone with the eye disease views the world? Well, let's mimic cataract, for example. And it's very simple to do. All you have to do is take a set of goggles and wrap wax paper around those goggles, and then place them on your head. How has that changed your vision? Glaucoma is a name for a set of diseases that can cause damage to the optic nerve. Some types of glaucoma is caused because of an increase in pressure in your eye, called intraocular pressure. This can cause parts of the optic nerve to pinch and lead to damage of those cells in the optic nerve. It can become so severe that it can lead to blindness. For your last challenge, you will observe your blind spot, and then we'll do a set of exercise to see why it's so difficult for you to even find your blind spot. If you find your blind spot, it should have been about 20 centimeters from your face. So why is it so difficult to find our blind spot? Did you notice that when you looked at the blue line, it looked continuously instead of segmented? Well, what our brain does is it uses the surrounding information to fill in our blind spot. And that's why we saw the line was actually continuous, and also the reason why we saw that some of the circles, the red circle was actually a blue circle. Well, remember, to take care of your eyes, you must protect them from injury, get regular eye exams, and definitely wear your sunglasses when you go out. I hope that you enjoyed the lesson that I've created to talk about eye function and eye disease. I basically put a little twist on the traditional eye dissection because I found that a lot of classes dissect the eye and they talk about the structures and functions, but they don't talk often enough about eye diseases that affect those structures. So I thought that by putting the eye diseases and the function together, that this would help students to remember more about why it's important to have particular components of the eye. I hope you enjoyed the different types of the eye animal kingdom section. That's something new that we've added to the lesson to hopefully engage students and to start them thinking about the evolution of the eye. We don't specifically talk about the evolution of the eye in the lesson, but that's something you could definitely add on if you're interested in doing so. And you can often talk about why animals would have needed particular parts of the eye in order to adapt to their environments. So this lesson can be used if you have eyes available to dissect. It would be very useful to do it along with the lesson. But if you don't have eyes available to you, I think also it still would be useful for students to see the different parts of the eye. You can obtain eyes from possibly a local butcher, but if you do not have a local butcher to obtain the eyes, you can also order them online through Carolina and other companies, other biological companies, supply companies. In thinking about the challenge questions, I thought about what would engage students, what would make them think a little bit more about the eye? So the first question was sort of a fun activity to think about what animals see, and that can be done by splitting up students into pairs or in groups of 4, and then have them match according to their prior knowledge first, and then hopefully by going through the lesson they can make a more educated guess on what animals see. For the second challenge, I really wanted to tap into the misconceptions that some students have about vision. We often find that in asking students how vision works, they think that something actually shoots out from your eyes, or what we like to call the Superman effect. And so the mirror exercise hopefully helps them think about how light is actually bouncing off of objects and then going into our eyes and going through an entire process in order for us to see. The other challenge questions can be done in groups of 2 or 4, or can be done alone. For example, the optical illusion could be done just individually. And that exercise is really trying to show that we have these involuntary eye movements that we're not always aware of. The involuntary eye movements, are important because we do not want our photoreceptors to become over-adapted or overstimulated. If it were to do that, then our image would actually go blank. So our eyes just slightly move around in order to allow for the photoreceptors to continue to be slightly turned on and respond. The fourth challenge hopefully got students to think about eye diseases and what someone with an eye disease would see and how they would view their world. So in that example I used the cataract goggles, but there's lots of other different goggles that you can make. Glaucoma goggles, age-related macular degeneration goggles, retinitis pigmentosa goggles. There's lots of different things that just by looking online and seeing how scientists predict a person like that sees, and then kind of modeling it in any way that you feel is helpful. The last challenge is probably my favorite one. It really goes to seeing a structure in the eye, the blind spot, and where the optic nerve is coming out, and then looking at it, being able to find it visually, I think is very interesting. And those exercises are lots of fun to do. It basically is showing where your blind spot is located, which what we found for most teachers and students is that it's really fascinating to see that, to actually recognize that you have a blind spot. And then the other exercises in that challenge question just really show that the brain is filling in a lot of the information to help us not be able to recognize that we have a blind spot. So the brain is very, very powerful in this visual processing that we have. And I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Feel free to give comments and feedback on anything that you've seen, and enjoy.